Hello, and welcome to Bruce World, How I See Things. If you haven't guessed it, I'm Bruce Handler. And with each episode, I plan to discuss a thought-provoking topic and, of course, share my point of view. To talk about humans and the interesting things we do, maybe teach you a thing or two, share some facts that are really true, and make you laugh at least once before I'm through. Hello, and welcome to episode 6 of my podcast entitled ASMR, the silly and serious side of this tingling and stimulating topic. Now, I have to admit that until this past year, I literally had no idea what ASMR meant. And maybe it's simply because I'm not big on the social, which stands for social media for those my age and older who are not quite as hip as I am. So when I talk to people, some are like, ASMR what? What are you talking about, Bruce? And others are like, oh yeah, I know all about it. And is it any wonder that these people tend to be younger or are parents of kids who are big YouTube watchers? So bottom line here, since I'm a cut to the chase sort of fella, is I learned that for certain segments of our population, ASMR is crazy popular. And even more so than shows like The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, I'm in Love with a Convict, and The Real Housewives of pretty much every town in America. Now, I'm not here to talk about the quality of reality TV shows. That's a podcast for another day. But I am here to tell you why it's time for all of us to get a clue and learn about ASMR. Assuming, of course, that it's new to you or you want to learn more about it, because it really takes relaxation to a whole new level. And even the most anxious or the most grumpy people can experience this amazing, tingly bliss. I know it sounds weird for a grown man like myself to say that, tingly bliss, but I said it. In fact, I said it twice, and I'm still comfortable, well, fairly comfortable with my manhood. When I first started hearing the acronym ASMR, it just seemed to go in one ear and out the other. But then I started to hear about it more and more. And then ASMR thumbnails started to pop up on my YouTube account. Coincidence? Or are there bigger forces at play here? Like the deep state, perhaps. Anyway, I decided to check out some of the videos to learn what all the hubbub, hullabaloo, and hoo-ha was all about. And I have to admit that the first two I watched made me laugh like a hysterical hyena, because the first one was a 34-minute video literally called Fluffy Sleep Whispers, followed by another 22-minute video called Deep Ear Attention. More on those later. But for now, let's get serious. Let me share what ASMR stands for, which is Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response. Sounds pretty fancy schmancy if you ask me, although I learned this term was not coined by some famous scientist, neurologist, psychiatrist, physiologist, or anyone whose profession ends in an ist. But instead, it was just made up one day by someone like you and me, a regular person named Jennifer Allen, who last I read worked as a manager for a cybersecurity company. So I say we forget what it stands for unless you want to try and show off during some drinking game. Now, Jennifer didn't just come up with this ASMR meridian thing yesterday. She made it up about 11 years ago, and it's grown insanely popular ever since. Okay, so what is ASMR, which I like to call ASMR or A? What does it really mean in English? Well, the most basic definition is feeling a relaxing, tingling, or soothing sensation that usually starts in your head and then may travel down to various parts of your body, and it helps you to relax. And sometimes it can actually put you in a trance-like state or cause you to drift off to sleep. It's even been described by some as experiencing a brain massage. And the sensations at times can be so powerful that it's been described by various people as somewhat euphoric. And that includes me. Now, does that sound awesome or what? Okay, so after hearing this, how can you possibly not want to learn more about ASMR or ASMR or A, unless you already know all about it and are finding ways to experience it and apply it, and you're good to go? So if this ASMR thing is all new to you, I hope you will listen and open your mind to something truly nifty, neat, and downright super cool. Now, just how popular is this ASMR thing? Well, believe it or not, there are over 13 million ASMR videos on YouTube and an estimated 11 million searches for ASMR videos every month. And Google, the gold standard in data, shows people searching for ASMR on the internet about a zillion times. Well, not quite a zillion, but it's about 2 million times a month. All right, then. So what triggers this super cool tingling sensation? Well, it's most often activated by certain sights, sounds, and experiences, and may involve touching a person with one's hands or using an apparatus or device or gadget like a hairbrush, comb, chalk, a dustbuster, crinkling paper that doctors like to use in their office, a can of ribs. Okay, just testing to see if you are listening. Scratch the can of ribs. A typewriter or an old calculator that has paper coming out of it. A purring cat. And that thing with those little metal suspended balls. And you pull back on one, and then it swings into the others. And you hear that clicking going back and forth. Uh-oh, hold on. I just realized I was talking about this topic without mentioning the dangers of ASMR. And there are 2 dangers you should be aware of. 1, laughing to death at some of the ASMR videos. 2, experiencing that tingling feeling while operating heavy equipment like a car or a wrecking ball. Now, I actually first discovered this A feeling without knowing what it was when I was all of 8 years old. It happened when I started watching my brother draw a picture. I was just sitting at the dining room table, watching him methodically use different types of charcoal. He was being very meticulous and detailed, and with each stroke, I started to feel this unusual sensation in my head, a tingling, and started to feel my whole body relax and my eyes getting heavy. It was like my head was becoming numb. Just like when I was in school in 3rd grade and listening to my math teacher trying to explain multiplication tables. Well, as I got older and advanced from going to Sam the barber, who was probably about 80 and whose hands were a bit shaky, to an actual hair salon, where my barber was actually a barberia and about 25. It was the very first time I had someone wash my hair before cutting it, and I experienced that same ASMR feeling like when I was a kid. All this tingling going on in my head. And I was ready to say, let's forget the haircut and just spend the next hour having you wash my hair. It's almost like the experience causes your brain to shut down and your mind to go limp. Needless to say, I look forward to going back to having my hair done as often as possible, and thankfully it grew rather fast. Now, over the years, I discovered other triggers, with one of my favorites being getting my shoe shined. Every time I traveled by plane, I made sure to build in enough time to get my shoe shined at the airport, even if they were just shined a week earlier. And the shoe shine guy would say, "Hey, these look newly shined. Are you sure you want me to shine them?" And of course I said, "You betcha." Because just watching the movements of the person shining my shoes triggered those ASMR feelings. So no wonder I gave the shoe shiners such big tips, although I could tell at times they were looking at me a bit funny, not because of the big tips, but I think it was because after the shine, I looked like I had fallen into a bit of a coma. And here's one more thing that triggers that A feeling, and that ties into my last podcast episode, and that will maybe get you to think I have totally and completely lost it. But watching certain tornado videos, in particular, where the sound quality is excellent and I can hear the rain fall, the hailstones bouncing off the ground or a storm chaser's car, and hear the sound of the tornado as if I was standing right there. Oh, and there is nothing better than when these videos have a narrator with a soothing voice who tells you a story about the tornado. And all of this leads to Head Tingle City for me. Now, I'm not the only one who likes watching these videos to help fall asleep at night. My wife has actually recently been asking me to put them on before we go to bed to help her fall asleep as well. Strange, but true. Now, what triggers your A feeling can be one of many, many things, but my hope for you is that you find out what they are. And if you're really fortunate, you'll find multiple things. Because when this sensation is triggered, it feels wonderful, stupendous, stupendiful, splendiferous. Uh-oh, hold on. There's one important thing I forgot to mention, which is what triggers that wonderful A feeling for one person may have the opposite effect on another. And my wife and I have both experienced this. That opposite feeling can range from making you become anxious, annoyed, angry, to experiencing physical maladies like getting a headache, feeling nauseated, wanting to pull the hair off your head, or worst case scenario is to spontaneously combust. So let's get to the friggin' triggers already. Jeez, what's taking me so long to get to the good stuff? Now, what is the most common trigger? Well, according to a study, and isn't there a study for everything these days, including a study of studies? Anyway, a study showed that for about 2/3 of people, the trigger is listening to a softly spoken, soothing, or whispering voice. Like this one. Sorry, my bad. Wrong track. Take two.
2,000-foot interpretive path completed in the summer of 1995 was developed so that all persons, regardless of their abilities, may enjoy a visit with nature. Benches along the way offer a place to rest. Large print, interpretive brochures, and cassette tapes.
Now, the softly spoken or soothing voice works great for me. For example, my son recently suggested I listen to Earl Nightingale. And no, I didn't make up that name. Well, he was on the radio back in the 1950s and 60s. And here comes a fun fact. Do you know how many people owned a television set in 1950? Which back then weighed almost as much as a car. The answer is only 9% of Americans. Anyway, There are a number of YouTube videos on Earl's recordings, and I have to say he does cover a variety of interesting subjects that range from human behavior to motivation, success. And in fact, if you were to ask me, I would say what he was doing was actually podcasting before his time. But more importantly to me is that he has a very monotone, soothing voice that I can find incredibly relaxing. And it sounds something like this. So in order to be successful, there are 3 key things you need to do. And if you do those things, success will be in your grasp. This is Earl Nightingale saying goodnight. Okay, maybe that wasn't the best impression of Earl, but sometimes I'm able to listen to his entire show, and other times, given his voice, I have to admit, I go out like a light. Now let's talk about this ASMR whispering thing. When my wife and I hear some of these whispering YouTube videos, it's like fingernails on a chalkboard. And we want to crawl out of our skin because to us, it's more like a form of torture. Not too far off from what I assume waterboarding may be like. Now, you may love them, and that's fine. Or you may feel like us. You be the judge.
Can you keep my secret? Can you keep my secret? Can you keep my secret? Shh. 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 Goodbye. 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 Farewell. Hello, friend. Goodbye. Farewell.
So obviously, my wife and I must be the oddballs when it comes to this. And let's face it, sometimes we are oddballs. We are clearly outliers given how popular these videos are. But I'm not sure if their popularity is solely caused by the whispering and the triggering of the tingling in one's head, or the fact that many of these whisperers in the videos just happen to be very attractive, fit, and young women who speak and act very seductively while doing their whispering. I mean, let's face it, you're not likely to find one of these whispering videos that has some really old guy named Bellotto in a stained T-shirt with an unkept beard that's stuck with various food particles, who has a beer belly the size of a keg and lots of ear and nose hair. Not that some people might not find that relaxing. So are you ready for the list of all the main ASMR triggers? I'll give you time to get a pen, pencil, or other writing utensil. Here it comes. Here are the other most common things that trigger that mysterious tingling feeling. Listening to music. Personally, I listen to a lot of new age, easy listening, and relaxing music, but I have never had it trigger that tingling feeling or cause me to fall asleep. Not even when I listen to that soothing spa music. Then there's watching somebody attentively execute a mundane task, such as preparing food, following a recipe like a science project, taking their time to measure every ingredient perfectly while talking you through each step. Other mundane tasks that are popular for triggering that response, like the one I had when I was a kid, is watching somebody draw, paint, or sculpt something, or build something, or repair something, like shoes. And I'm sure you won't be surprised that you can find plenty of YouTube videos on shoe repair. And yes, I've watched some. And they could be very relaxing. I also discovered that there are men's shoes that cost more than a 1-week round trip to Hawaii. So I think I'll stick with my rock boards. And how about watching doctor's exams? So they have these head-to-toe physicals and eye exams that students have to practice, and you can find plenty of those on YouTube. Now, when I go for my annual eye exam, ASMR totally kicks in. And I wish the exam would last for at least an hour, because I do get those magic tingles in my head. If I can only go for an eye exam every day. I mean, the eye exam sets up perfect conditions for that A response. It's often a darkened room. The exam is very methodical. My doctors seem to talk very softly. And, of course, they use that crinkly doctor paper. And then when I'm asked what's better, 1, 2, or 3? 2, 1, 3, 2, about 20 times, as they try to pick the right lenses for me, my head goes into Tingle City. And I'm afraid I'm going to start to drool and, worse, end up with glasses that I won't be able to see out of. Then there's watching chiropractic treatments. From the exam to the adjustments and the popping sounds to the conversation between the patient and the chiropractor. They've unintentionally become the new ASMR videos. And if you want to watch one of the most relaxing, and it's about an hour long, it's called Most Complete Chiropractic Adjustment in the World. And let me repeat that. It's called Most Complete Chiropractic Adjustment in the World. And between the adjustments and the voice of the chiropractor, this is ASMR Platinum. Well, what about certain out-of-the-ordinary repetitive sounds that can also cause that ASMR feeling? There are tons and tons of videos on YouTube that do this, where someone scratches something, they tap their nails, they make these repeated fluttering sounds or hundreds of other repetitive sounds, all of which cause me to actually have that opposite ASMR effect known as the DNBMMC effect. And that stands for does nothing but make me cringe. But others love them. Again, it may be the very attractive young and fit women in the videos who are crinkling away, sometimes in very skimpy outfits. But who's to judge? Whatever makes you tingle, right? Now, more than anything, and I mean absolutely anything, what can trigger that A feeling the most is having someone, preferably a human being, touch you. And no, this has nothing to do with anything sexual, so get your mind out of the gutter. For most people, it's touching their head or their hair or both. And it could include brushing or combing it over and over, running your fingers through it, or lightly touching or massaging the back of someone's neck. But it can, of course, include touching other parts of the body. Again, keep your minds out of the gutter. I'm talking about squeezing and pressing into somebody's feet or hands, or just caressing them can also be a common trigger. I know I could put my wife to sleep in about 5 minutes just by pressing into certain spots on her feet. Now, in addition to the type of touching I mentioned, something related to that can often trigger ASMR is having someone perform a task on you, like getting a manicure or pedicure, or giving you a hot shave with a straight razor, or getting your hair cut, or having someone put on or take makeup off of you. Now, years ago, I used to treat myself to a trip to Truffett and Hill Barbershop where they cut my hair, massaged my head, neck, and face, gave me a hot shave and a manicure and a pedicure, and by the time all this was done, I was pretty much done. I was toast. I was in a coma of tingling relaxation. And lastly, I'll mention the power of certain repetitive soothing sounds, like a crackling fireplace or the continuous rain hitting the roof of your home, or listening to someone walking or driving on gravel or frozen snow, and the crunching sound that it makes. If you haven't experienced any of these ASMR triggers, you're truly missing out on one of the most amazing feelings a human being can experience. Now, you could watch the types of videos I mentioned, or do one better, experience it in real life. And during this time of COVID, that means relying on your partner, even if just once a week or once every 2 weeks or once a month. Have your partner do things that trigger that tingling sensation if you know what they are. Or experiment and find out what may cause it, which in and of itself can be a lot of fun. If you don't have a partner, you can also lie down or sit still, close your eyes in a darkened room, and imagine what it would be like for someone to wash your hair or massage your feet. And believe it or not, you can trigger that A response. I know because I've tried it and it works. Well, I don't know about you, but all this ASMR talk is making me a bit sleepy. And it's possible you may have dozed off somewhere along the way. So best I end this here. I hope you are able to feel some form of relaxation during this podcast, and that for some of you, it may have triggered that ASMR reaction. Anyway, until we meet again on my next episode, I hope you find a way to experience a little tingling numbness or that tranquil feeling. You know, that autonomous sensory meridian response. So thanks for stopping by, and thanks for listening, if you're still awake. I hope you were entertained, maybe learned something new, smiled a time or two, and here's to having at least an okay day. And if you don't, that you have what it takes to make it through. This is Bruce from Bruce World, the way I see things, and I hope you'll join me for my next episode.